started to understand just in the last 12 months is something that's actually absolutely shocking. We've understood that pervasive wireless technology is actually of far more value to the poor of the world than it is to the rich of the world. We get something out of it. The mobile phone, which has been popular in Australia for a little over 10 years, means that no one is ever late anymore. We're just delayed, unless you're being rude. But no one is ever late anymore. So it's smoothed out a lot of our social interactions. It's eased a lot of our social interactions. But it hasn't fundamentally disrupted our social interactions. It hasn't fundamentally changed the way we conduct business because we were already relatively efficient. But if you drop a mobile telephone into a culture which has had none of those efficiencies resolved, it's like a bomb going off. And so the uptake of mobile technology throughout the less developed parts of the world has been absolutely incredible. One example of this is a typical outpost. This is in, it might be Ghana, I'm not sure. It's somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is basically a map of how it begins inside of a particular village inside of Africa. What will happen is that someone in the community, generally a woman, will get a microfinance loan, and we'll talk about that for a minute, to be able to purchase a handset. And then they will sell time on that handset. Of course, because this village is off the grid, they're using batteries, solar cells, or other sorts of things to keep everything charged. Now, what happens next is that when the villagers start to use the mobile phone to increase the quality and increase their ability to earn money, this actually creates more of a demand for mobiles across the community, a demand which they can now afford because they're using this to be more effective. And so, the premier, the foundation microfinance organization in the world, Grameen Bank, found that originally they were giving money to people, generally women, so that they could actually buy mobile phones and rent time on them. But they found that they were doing this so often that they realized the most efficient thing they could do was to set up a telco. And so Bangladesh now has Grameen Phone in addition to the Grameen Bank, so that they can provide the full suite of services to people who are the very poorest, so that they can actually blanket cover that entire market. And what this means now is that the people who originally bought Grameen phones to sell minutes on to their other villagers are now not just selling that, but they're actually selling phones to the other villages. They're selling cards with time on them to the other villages, and now the other villages are also getting mobile phones. Now this is the adoption, the technology adoption curve. All right, this is probably familiar to a lot of you if you've seen how technologies get taken up in the culture. As of March, according to the International Telecommunications Union, there were 3.4 billion mobile phone subscribers on planet Earth. We've passed the halfway point. Now, there's only about 1 billion people on Earth who earn more than, say, $3,000 a year, which means we're now dealing with a cohort of people who are earning somewhere between $1,000 to $3,000 a year. And they have become now the majority of mobile phone subscribers on the planet. And they are now discovering new ways to make the mobile phone. Because remember, the mobile phone for them is not a social appliance. It is not about finding out if you're going to be late for dinner. It is about finding out if I can earn the money to pay for dinner. And so it's become now an incredibly potent and transforming force across the developing world. And probably by this time next year, we're going to be very close to 4 billion. And then we're actually starting to get into the ratio of people who can legitimately afford to pay for a phone and pay for time on a phone. But what we're now starting to see is you're seeing charitable institutions who are coming around to us saying, you've got mobile phones, give them to us, because you threw yours away, because you only keep them for 18 months. And we will give these to people who need them, so they can use them to improve the quality of their life. And so, 2 or 3 years' time, we're going to be getting to 4.5, 5 billion people out of 6.5 billion people who are all connected into a global network. And the best symbol of this is the anti-bling phone. This is the anti-iPhone. All right? This is the Nokia 1100. Now, in its first 4 years of release, the iPod and all of its various manifestations sold 100 million units. Very good. Everyone knows what an iPod is. A lot of people have iPods. Nokia 1100, which was designed to be cheap and durable. It's completely sealed, so it can't be affected by dust. You can get it in basically any language that has more than 1 million speakers. This little device, in its first 3 years, 200 million. At this point, it's probably quite close to 300 million, and they know that the 200 million went to a man in Nigeria. All right? This is what the future looks like for most people. And this becomes their portal now into the network. They don't necessarily need all the fancy services that we'll be talking about today. When they can get them and when they're inexpensive, they will put them to work. But the key lesson to learn from the Kerala fishermen is that as long as you give them the network, human beings are more than ingenious enough to figure out exactly what to do with it.